Welcome to Mind and Faith Matters, the podcast about mental health, our faith, and everything in between. I'm the host, Cory Potter, and I want to get started on this premiere episode by talking about how Mind and Faith Matters became a podcast. I want to talk about my life. We'll have plenty of guests in the coming weeks, months, years. But these first few episodes, I want to just give you my heart and some of my background so that you know who I am in this exciting adventure. So I was born not so long ago, about a half century plus. And I was born to loving parents. I had two older sisters, and we had a great childhood. Cool cousins, great friends at school. But I wanted to talk about how my background has affected me and my faith. I was born with a musculoskeletal disability called arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. Don't worry about it, AMC for short. But AMC allows me to see things from a different perspective. If you read textbook, let's just go here. Textbook says that people with AMC are smarter than average, which is great. I love that. I like having a disability that allows me to be smart. I don't know how that works. I'm going with it. But it also affects my arms and my legs. I have strong shoulders and elbows, but my hands are weak. My feet and my knees are weak, and my hips are somewhat weak. So I wear leg braces. I have for a long time. I'm not really self-conscious about it. It's just who I am. But I am aware that I have like a pirate smile and that I am abled differently, as they say. But I was raised by parents who were very loving, very understanding, and really wanted me to be independent. And that shaped who I am and how I approach situations. And one of the first concepts I want to talk about tonight is this thing called a locus of control. And a locus of control is just about how you feel you control your environment or the environment has influence on you. And so the people who have an internal locus of control, they realize or they think that I can make things happen. I can affect what happens to me. It's an active approach to life. And I think that my disability allowed me to be raised where it wasn't what you can't do, it's what you can do. It's not what you have to overcome, it's what you do overcome. It's not that the world gave you a bad break or God punished you by having this disability. My upbringing was about how I can actively make my life work for me. Not everyone has that. There are people with what they call an external locus of control. And it's basically that things happen to you instead of you happening to things. And when things happen to you, which are legitimate, sometimes people are controlling. Parents are mean. Parents are abusive. Other people are abusive. People bully. Bad things happen to people. But someone with an external locus of control might think, there's nothing I can do about it, so why bother? It won't make a difference anyway. Whatever happens is meant to happen. Or my successes and failures are all based on luck or fate or other people that have more power than me. And we will talk about this in a little bit more depth, but I wanted to say that I approach life from a very internal locus of control. And so as I was growing up, I became a perfectionist and wanted to control probably too much, but I never felt sorry for myself. When I had challenges as a kid, that translated into something I could overcome, just like my disability. And so I've done things over my life, like got into wheelchair marathoning probably close to 18 years ago now. And I completed 3 full marathons and a half marathon and some 5Ks just so I could do it and train myself up and say that I accomplished it. It wasn't so much that other people would praise me, it was an internal, I want to do this, I want to prove it to myself. And so I did. Well, as I was growing up with these cool people around me, things happen sometimes. And technically, one of the more devastating things that can happen to a kid is to hear that your parents decide they're going to split up and get a divorce. So when I was 10, I heard those exact words from my parents that I was going to move in with my dad. And my dad handled it in the sense of he took care of us, he went to work, and he took us to church. And that was good. And I remember thinking as a kid, if my parents can stop loving each other, maybe they'll stop loving me. And I wanted unconditional love. I didn't want them to stop loving me. They didn't, and I don't think they would ever. But as a 10-year-old kid, I didn't know. So we went to church, and Pastor Hodges gave this message on the unconditional love of Christ, and that he died for us, and that he'll never leave us or forsake us. And that was very comforting to think I could have that. So I approached God and came to God understanding his love. But out of that love, I also understood that he did not want me to go on sinning and go against his ways. I didn't know all his ways. I didn't know the Bible. I was 10 years old. I was learning. But that was the beginning of my faith. With that, I will say that it was a sputtering through high school. I mean, I don't think my friends would have said, "Oh, Cory, he's this mega Christian and he acts like a Christian all the time." I mean, I did some things, and I did some partying that I don't want my kids to have done. Now they're grown, they can handle themselves. But I did some things. And so it wasn't until I got to college and met my college sweetheart my freshman year, who's now my wife of nearly 32 years. And she was newer to her faith. And so she encouraged me to go to church. I was never baptized, so I got baptized in believer's baptism to make this public profession that, yeah, I believe that Christ died for my sins and he rose again. And I wanted the world to know that symbolically I was washing away my sins. And so Sue and I relied on her faith when we first got together, honestly, because I thought I could control things because of my overly internal locus of control. I thought that I was able to make things happen, and I didn't really appreciate how it worked with God. And I didn't have Christianity in view of this locus of control. I never called it locus of control, by the way. It's just a psychological construct that a psychologist named Rotter, Rotter, like Potter, came up with in 1966. And basically, I didn't necessarily want my wife to get too involved, and it made me jealous a little bit at first, honestly, that she was loving God so much. But then I came into my own. I realized I loved her more than anything. I loved our kids. I needed to really explore my faith and my love for God. Over the years, I got more involved in church. I taught Sunday school. I taught a men's group accidentally. Someone said that a guy was leaving and they needed someone to step in. And I was next up. I stepped in one week and I didn't stop teaching the men's group. I eventually became a deacon in that church. And when I was called to be a deacon, I was working full time, and I got a call one day. My business partner and I got a call at work because we didn't have a crisis counselor at that church. And we were called to someone's house, and the wife had overdosed and died that night. And their multiple kids were at school, and their husband was who we were supposed to be comforting. And I knew I could pray for him. I knew I could be physically present with him, but I didn't know what to do. I was a pretty young guy, trying to figure it out. And so I watched him punch the concrete wall and bloody his knuckles. And that was really sad and almost traumatic. And that day, they said someone has to go to the middle school and high school and tell these kids. And so I said I would do it. And so my business partner and I went, because we went to the same church too. That's why we were going to do this. And we told them. And that was hard. And I remember thinking, I need to prepare myself to be a Christian counselor. I told Sue, I need some crisis counseling, technically. So I was going to get a certificate in crisis counseling. And so I started looking at what was out there and books that I could read. And there was a veterinarian that was my Sunday school teacher, Dr. Bob Nipper, over in Daytona. And he said that, I think it was his daughter-in-law, started taking a master's program in counseling, Christian counseling, from Liberty University. And so I explored it. I had had a bachelor's degree in designing braces and artificial limbs because that was my first career. I did that for nearly 8 years, but it was physically demanding on my body, which I knew it would be. But the chemicals plus the physical demands, I ended up switching other careers. But I went back to school while I was working in life and got a master's degree in Christian counseling and learned about the integration of theology, or the study of God, His Word, and psychology, and how the mind and mental health works in God's economy, or God's in faith. And so I did that, and 2 years into it, I want to say, I felt God calling me to pastor, and I'm like, whoa, wait, I'm already serving you. I'm doing this. What's going on here? And I actually was a little bit miserable for about 2 years because I kept on avoiding it and going on and thinking, there's no way that's what He wants me to do. It was confirmed with some pastors that I spoke to, and ultimately I agreed, and I became a family life pastor at a smaller church in Sanford, Florida. And in there, I became a youth pastor. When our youth pastor left, even though I was family life pastor, I served our youth and their families, the mental health of the church, and discipleship, as we call them, life groups. So I did that, and then I felt called to plant churches. I ended up over in Daytona, serving as an associate pastor, helping another pastor that just inherited a church, or the building, and started a new church. That was fun and exciting, but I knew there was more. And so I left and became a co-pastor of a coffee house type church back in Sanford, Florida, and did that for a little bit, and felt that I needed to step away and start a different kind of church that was more home-based, just different. And so B Church was birthed out of that. Along the way, I did what pastors do: weddings, funerals, sermons, teaching, all those things. We ultimately moved to Danville, Virginia, where we currently live, and I got a job and we started B Church here. Small, slow roll, because as soon as I got up here, this was in 2018, I got up here and I originally fell and hurt my shoulder and was sputtering from pain from that, trying to heal. And by the fall of 2019, I ended up falling and injuring my back and my hip. I had some nerve pain, nerve impingement. And as I was waiting on getting an epidural or for something to happen, laying around trying to work, I ended up developing a blood clot on the back of my brain. I went to the hospital and was released, but I couldn't climb stairs because my back was hurting. So we had to move. It was a lot. And so the church just didn't get started until 2021. But in 2020, before that, COVID happened. And so we didn't want to start meeting with people virtually that we didn't know. We wanted to get to meet them face to face. And so I ended up getting COVID, and then I had headaches that we classified as migraines because I didn't really understand that this blood clot thing was going to be with me for a long time. But in 2021, we started the church. We were meeting in a coffee house here in Danville that someone allowed us to use graciously. It was just my family meeting, and every once in a while, someone else would come. But it was small. And then I developed one of the worst headaches I've ever had. Double vision, ear ringing, and an excruciating headache for about 60 some days in a row. I couldn't really do much. My wife would read me some emails from work, and I tried. But I ultimately found out I needed to have that pressure relieved. So I had minor brain surgery, and that was in the spring of 21. By the fall of 21, I had fallen and my back was hurting so bad, I ended up having to have surgery 6 months later and a back fusion. And so I had that recovery. By then, I had said, I don't know what I'm going to do with the church. Since then, I've tried to just get my stamina back to finish my doctorate, which I just did in education, which is for curriculum design and curriculum evaluation and assessment. So the cool thing is, as I've been waiting on what do I do next, like I thought I was supposed to pastor. I had pastored, but I just don't feel like I could give people what they needed. Visitations, discipleship, the counseling on demand with crises, and still go to work and make a living. I just haven't had the energy. So I've been praying about it, thinking about it. And lo and behold, God answered my prayer and gave me the idea for Mind and Faith Matters podcast, the intersection of everything that I'm passionate about. And so over the last several months, I've just been finishing up my doctorate, and this came right to me. And there's going to be work involved, but I think I can handle that. There's that internal locus of control. I can handle the situation. I want to show you a graphic about Christianity and locus of control. And I want to tell you that some people will say, is this podcast just going to be about positive thinking all the time? And the answer is no. Sometimes I'm going to challenge us. I'm going to have guests on that are going to talk about things that may make you think about, how am I handling this? So it's not just all about, oh, let's just think positive and have a growth mindset and all think like Cory. Now, I am going to say this. I think there's some positive aspects to trusting God and responding in faith. That's what I've been able to do to get to this point. Not everyone's called to pastor or to counsel or to do a podcast, but whatever you've been called to do, whatever you're doing, consider this. You can have a life that is all about trying to control every situation. You can have a life that you can't control any situation because you just feel like everything's going to happen to you. But there's a sweet spot in between. And that sweet spot for all of us can be learning to trust God and then learning to respond in faith. Next week, we're going to start by looking at Christianity and our locus of control. How do we see God in our lives and in our faith? I can tell you this, I am so excited about this opportunity. I don't take it lightly, and I know that it's not for everyone, but for those that I can help, those that I could encourage, that's what I'm here for. And so I think my purpose, beyond using my gifts and abilities to bring fame to God or to thank God or to grow his kingdom by using them well, in fact, I'm just so excited that I have that opportunity. So until next week, I just want you to know that you can turn around a lot of situations by thinking healthy, by praying a lot, and by seeking God. I also want to say that this is a very humbling experience for me because I don't think I'm a personality in the sense of I need to be getting famous or I need a bunch of people to know who I am. I'm just simply wanting to make a difference in the way that God wants me to make a difference in the people that I can make a difference for. And so I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.